All right, it's a Thursday night, which means it's a Las Vegas Triathlon Club member spotlight night. This is great to do. I'm John Mercer, president of Las Vegas Tri Club. We got Bob Gambo,
Hello, folks.
co-host of the Spotlight. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
It's going fine. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Well, we have a fun guest tonight. This is one of our first spotlights of our 2021 point series winners. And we have Robert Strohmeyer, who won the rookie division. And it's going to be a lot of fun to talk with Robert. I enjoyed meeting him at our club races. And then we discovered before we started this talk tonight, we discovered that we actually passed each other in out training in like this obscure northeast section of Vegas. So, Robert, great to have you on tonight.
Thank you so much. Appreciate to be here. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Bob for the official introduction.
Thank you, John, and welcome, Robert. We're really glad to have you here tonight. And I was really looking forward to having Robert on here. And I tried to get him on a few times. Finally succeeded, finally got in contact. And first of all, a little bit about Robert. He is a rookie. He joined the club in June of 2021 and did his first triathlon, the sprint series, a couple days after that. And Robert has been in Vegas since 2009, I believe you said?
That is correct.
And,
yep.
and is ex-military and did a couple of tours in Iraq in the Air Force. So thank you so much for your service and glad you made it back.
Thank you.
But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and folks, one of the things real interesting about Robert, he did his first triathlon, was a sprint club race. 6 weeks later, he did a Ironman 70.3 in Salem, Oregon. And it's like, people just don't do that. You don't go from a sprint to a 70.3 in that short period of time. So that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, I mean, what was going through your head when you did that, and how did you do that? Tell us about, and we're going to get to your first race and what it was all about. But just to get us started, your first race, and then you signed up for 70.3. Tell us about that.
The story actually starts with watching an Instagram video, and the headline of the Instagram video was "The Race That Almost Killed Me," and it was this gentleman that was about 250, 260 pounds, and he did a 70.3. And I basically watched it, and I was like, well, if he can do that, I can do it, right? Being ex-military, I was like, yeah, I can just figure this out. Yeah, right. So essentially, I went on the Ironman website exactly when I finished that video. I went on the Ironman website, and it came to Oregon was the last one that wasn't sold out. That was on the West Coast. That wasn't like in December, because when I have my mind on something, I just want to do it then. And that's probably not the way that you should be doing something like an Ironman prep and race,
to say the least.
And funny enough, so I hired Luigi as a coach, and he's a great guy. And
Luigi
shortly after hiring him, I watched his member spotlight on the website, and he was talking about me, a person that just got off a couch. and he gets hurt and all this stuff, and they're not fast, they don't finish. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to prove him wrong a little bit. But from the aspect of I had 6 weeks, because that was the last race that was of anywhere close to us at the time.
It wasn't going to be in December.
No, yeah, exactly. Or I think it was Indian Wells, I think was that race, and I just didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait for it, and I didn't even own a bike. I bought the bike a couple of days before I actually raced the sprint.
Wow,
I know. And tell us how Luigi got you ready in 6 weeks, and how did you get ready in 6 weeks?
So Luigi's a stand-up guy. From the first conversation with him, I was really proud that I got that introduction, and to have him actually give me some good information, essentially just talking to him for about 30 minutes of what I was trying to do, how I was trying to do it. And then essentially what he did is he ramped me up fairly gingerly for the first, I guess, say 2 weeks. And then it got fairly inclined quickly for the next 2 to 3. And then the last week we came down, right?
Mhm.
And the idea was to not essentially effectively finish the race,
Oh,
right? So it wasn't about, coming in a certain place or on the podium or anything like that. It just came down to finishing the race.
And that's so smart. You didn't have I want to hit this time. I want to be on the podium. I want, yeah, that was a smart way to do that for sure.
Yeah.
Military help, military discipline.
Yeah, military. It comes down to I've seen some of these where there's some very smart people that know exactly what their body's doing at any one point in time, and the military teaches you just how to get through things, and not necessarily the scientific way of making your body do something at peak performance. And I just use that kind of mentality of, maybe my body was probably not at the peak. I wasn't running the right way, or I wasn't biking the right way, but essentially I just did the time and got the distance and finished the race.
And you monitored yourself the whole time during the race.
Uh, Within reason. I think I felt amazing on the bike. I guess we'll get there. I felt amazing on the bike, and then I developed a side stitch coming out of T2, and that it hampered me for the first 3 miles, and then I got some hamstring cramps and stuff like that. But we can go into that later.
I love it. All right, but hold on. Before we get into the race now, I want to get this timeline down a little better. So you watched this Instagram video, and then you finished that, and you signed up for Oregon 70.3. When did you sign up? What time of year was that?
If I remember correctly, that was probably the last, maybe the last day of that would have been May, probably the last couple of days of May, if not the first part of June, like maybe June 2nd or something like that.
Oh,
I can go
so
back
you
up my
signed
receipts
up
and find out.
You signed up for Salem before you did the club race.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
all right. So you
I was
signed
spot
up.
committed.
I love it. I love this. So yeah, so May, you really only had about 8 weeks prior to the event. I love this, but you didn't even have a bike.
Yeah, I didn't have a bike yet.
So
Now that's
what
a new
so
one.
after you signed up, at what point did you say, okay, now I got to go get a bike?
Well, as soon as I signed up, I was like, I got to figure it out, right? And essentially, this is back. This is back when everyone's like, well, bikes are 6 months out, 7 months out. So I'm on Facebook Marketplace trying to find some old tri bikes, and bike. I went over to the Bike Brain, and we were kind of looking at the bike that I was looking at, but the front tube was chopped, and essentially it was just not going to work for me as far as how big I was, how small the gentleman that I was trying to buy the bike from. So I wanted up buying a new Orbea, essentially a road bike. I really wanted a tri bike, but then I had to be reasonable in some aspects of, if I didn't really like riding the tri bike, then I would probably never ride it again after the race. And so I went with the road bike, and I just,
That's smart.
Mhm.
I just went that way. That way I can enjoy the bike
Yeah.
whenever I wanted to ride it, instead of just practicing or
Yeah.
training for a race.
So much more versatile too. You could ride it with group, in a group with.
I love it. I love this commitment right from the beginning, and just taking on this challenge without even a bike. But that's neat that you got that. So what was your swimming and running background going into signing up for the 70.3?
I probably white lied Luigi just a little bit. I did I did do a little bit of swimming in high school, but the reality is that was probably a month, and I was like, okay, I'm okay with this swimming thing. So I did swim for a month, but it really comes down to, I did do not cross country, but track and field.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
4x800 relay.
I
Oh
love
man, that 800, that'll get you
it.
in shape in a hurry. That's a tough race.
So that's a really good sport background. Obviously, with your military background, I can see, that's neat to have the confidence going into it. So, at what point after signing up and getting your bike did you find the club and then get ready for the club sprint race?
So essentially, I signed up for the Ironman. I basically probably stayed up all night if it was not that night, or that maybe the next day. Like, okay, all right, I need to figure out, I need to do this, a certain races, maybe a smaller races just for the transition,
Yeah.
the experience of transitioning from swim to bike and then bike to run.
Yeah.
Smart man.
And essentially, I was in luck because this one was coming up in a week and a half, I guess. And essentially, I signed up for it that day too. Once I got the bike, and it was amazing. One thing about that first race with you guys that really stuck with me, and so we did 2 laps in the water, come out, bike. And I was on this gentleman's rear tire, and every time we would go downhill, I would pass him, and every time we go uphill, he'd pass me. And then we got on the run, and we're going uphill, and I'm reeling him in, and this gentleman's in the 60s. His name's Edward Hoffman. I actually looked him up. That way, I would hope you know who he is.
Yeah,
And essentially we're talking and doing as much talking that I can do at the time. And as we're coming to the turnaround on the run, I feel pretty good. So I decide, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go about my business. And he was like, well, I'll see you on the downhill. And so as we're coming down the ramp, and I feel like I'm going fast, right? Because I'm doing okay. He just comes motoring past me. And
That's a lesson for you.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what people can do when they put their mind to it. And it was a very humbling experience for sure.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's good. I love that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so okay, so you do this first sprint race. Now you've done some Spartan races coming into triathlon though, right?
That is correct. Back in mainly 2014, 15 is when I did a lot of the Spartan stuff.
Yeah, so you're not you're familiar with multi-sport in general.
Competition.
Yeah. All right. So, but I'm curious. You finished that sprint race. What was going through your mind regarding the 70.3?
Yeah. How did those two compare? I just finished a sprint race. Now I have to do like 4 of them.
And to be honest with you, I wasn't really thinking in that way. Like I said, you guys have some very smart people that have been on this that know exactly what their body's doing at any one moment and how they're tackling something. The reality is my mindset was just surviving to a certain degree. I'm not going to, probably be of help to a lot of tri people in that regard. But from a rookie standpoint, it was just about survival and figuring out the nutrition part. Because I knew that if I figured out nutrition, that my body would carry me through as long as my mind stayed in it, right? And I didn't injure myself in some way. And so that was just it just came down to having the mentality of just getting through the miles.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, it's great. It's great that you didn't set time and pace and position, goals. That that was smart.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. No, spot on. You beat me to it. And I think that is such a great goal, just to complete an event, especially your first 70.3. All right. So after you did the sprint, how did you approach training for your 70.3? Like, what was going through your mind in terms of what you needed to do in your training program at that point?
What you needed to do differently?
Differently, to be honest with you, I heavily relied on Luigi in that point. He was setting up training in Training Peaks, and essentially I was just following what he was looking at my data. He knew what I needed, and then essentially I was just following what he gave me. And so, if he gave me 2, 3, whatever workouts a day, I just made sure that I finished them.
Good. Oh, that's great. Well, and that's a great thing for people to hear. I mean, it's nice to have a coach where you can rely on that, because they have the knowledge to help you get to that start line. So that's good. So you can just focus on the training. All right. So now I want to hear about the 70.3. So this is Salem, and you've got the shirt on. That's awesome. So talk us through the race. And I know we talked a little bit ahead of time that just getting to the start line is a little bit of an event, isn't it?
Yeah. So we drove. So I drove with my wife and my 2-year-old at the time. And so that was that just getting there was something special. And basically the start line was about, I want to say it was over a mile and about 45 minutes worth of walking, because essentially everyone's walking in a line. You're in the middle of a trail, forests all around. Everyone's cold because it's it's an early morning, and everyone's anxious about what's going on. And if anybody knows anything about the Oregon race, and it was the first one last year, it's a downstream swim on a river. So it's very beginner friendly as far as that is concerned. And essentially they were having issues because right where they were launching us, the river was doing an S. So people were trying to just swim across the S, and what they would end up downstream on a sandbar. So they would have to get up, stand up, walk across the rocks and the sand and all that stuff, and then get back into the water and swim. So they moved the buoys to try to get people to go around a certain way, and that added like another 30 minutes to our wait before we even got into the water. So essentially, you would have to position yourself to where you're swimming upstream as you're swimming across, like diagonal, and it would push you down. But then as soon as you got to a certain point in the S, it would suck you back into the back part of the S of the river. So you would have to go this way, and then after you get past a certain part, you have to almost switch the opposite way just to get to where you're going on the river. But once you actually got past that point, which was right at the start, you felt like a speedboat. At least I did, because I'm sitting there, I'm swimming as fast as I can, and I look up through the water, and the trees are just going by like so quickly.
Yeah.
I'm like, man,
What a cool feeling.
yeah. I was like, oh, this is what Michael Phelps feels like, right?
In a pool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So that's a complicated swim. I mean, and for your first 70.3, that you're going to be standing on the start line saying, wait, what is going on? And so I am curious, as you walked 45, 50 minutes to the start line, what is going through your mind? And as you're watching this redirection of the swim course,
of the current,
what's going through your mind at that point?
Be honest with you, I was around a couple talkative people, and I'm a fairly talkative person nowadays. When I was younger, I'm a fairly introverted person, but I've learned in my profession that I have to be a little bit more talkative. And so we were just talking about, it's either one lady, it was her first race, and she had like 6 kids or something like that. So she's already been through so much, and this is like basically nothing to her, right? After having 6 kids. The one gentleman just finished Coeur d'Alene, I think the week or 2 prior. So we were all having the conversations back and forth about that. So I wasn't really in my head about what was about to happen. But one thing about the swim that I didn't really take into account is when you start a swim that's at daybreak, and the sun is right where it's glaring off the water and you're facing the sun. I had no idea where I was going. I was trying to see the buoys. I would have to take, even though I had the sun glare goggles, I'd take my goggles off to see where the buoys are and make sure I was on the right side of them. Oh. So there's environmental factors that you don't really think about until you're actually there.
And then you solve the problems as they come, right?
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I get a sense of that you had this quiet confidence about yourself and what the day was going to unfold like. So this is really great to hear. And I think it's, partly your military background and just your general training and your sport background. So that's really neat.
John, something else I want to mention is not everybody could pick up what you had picked up. I do whitewater kayaking, and I know to get across a current, you have to angle the boat as though it's a propeller so that the current hitting it will push you in a certain direction. And that's something you figured that out when you got in the water. That's really something.
Yeah.
And but that's crazy. I've never experienced that. Swimming in a current like that and getting across the current and then to get into the current,
Yeah. No, it was cool. It was great. I mean, it was a very great experience. Really great experience.
All right. So you're in the Willamette. It's a beautiful river. You're watching these trees just fly by you.
Rocking by.
All right. So now you get out of the swim. What's going on into T1? What was that like?
T1, if I remember it correctly, essentially I had I swam with my bibs on. I swam with my bike shirt on. Essentially, I didn't have a wetsuit. I think it was cold enough for the wetsuit,
Mhm.
but I didn't want to risk buying the wetsuit and it not being cold enough to use it. I think they disqualify your time if you use it or something like that.
Okay.
And so I never bought one. So basically, I swam in my bike setup. So T1 was very easy. I just had to get up off the ramp into T1. I put on my shoes, helmet, got on the bike, and went.
How cold was that water?
It was. Let's say I think it was like 2 to 3 degrees lower than the cutoff. Yeah, it wasn't. It
That
wasn't
was not
too
too
bad.
cold then, 76 or so.
Yep.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it wasn't too cold. Got on the bike, and then essentially the routes says that it's mostly flat. When you're going through the city, there's a little bit of hills, and then you get out into the countryside where it is mostly flat. But
Yeah.
then comes the wind, because there was a couple crosswinds that would actually happen, because essentially there's nothing to block the wind from hitting you. And I just kind of sat down, wasn't trying to break any records. I believe, if I remember Luigi and I's discussion correctly, it was anything above 20 miles an hour, let the bike do the work. Anything below 20 miles an hour, pedal.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Right.
Good.
So if I'm going downhill and I'm going over 20 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour, I can't remember what the
Yeah.
actual limit was. He was like, just don't, there's no reason to pedal, if the gravity and the bike's helping you.
Hmm. Oh, that's good. And I like
Yeah.
that. That's a good plan to have, especially when you're going into your first 70.3. All right. So, but the bike went relatively smooth. Any issues that you had, or was it all went pretty well?
I'm actually fair. I felt fairly confident on the bike, just from the technical aspect of riding. So
Hmm.
there was a couple of things where you couldn't pass. Um, and sorry, it's all a blur that day, but you couldn't pass on the left or right, or you
Yeah.
couldn't, you had to pass on the left and get over, but you can't do a double pass, right? But this one person essentially going on a downhill past me, but then it's downhill, it's time to boogie, right? So I tried to like essentially follow him for the pass of the person that was in front of me, but then he slowed down, so I passed twice
Yeah.
for two people. So technically, I don't think I was in the right for doing that. But from a rule standpoint, I just felt like it was either I'm going to run into the back of him or I'm going to
Yeah.
pass him. So I might as well just go ahead and pass him and then avoid anything that's going to happen.
Were you on did you have aero bars at this time, or was it strict your road bike with drops?
No, just road bike with the horns, with the drops. Yeah.
But you didn't have extensions?
Nope. I
Okay,
don't.
cool.
Yeah, it's just a regular road bike.
I love it. That's Eddie. We call it Eddie Merck style. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Well, that is so impressive to, get a bike and at the time that you did and to be able to nail out hammer out a 56-mile bike ride. That's really impressive.
Yeah, it is.
There was 2 times that I did fairly good bike rides before leading up to the race. Twice I went. I live in the Southwest, and essentially I would ride up the Hualapai to the Beltway kind of loop thing.
Yep.
You go up to essentially Red Rock, through the Red Rock loop, down. I believe that's Charleston, whatever that road number is, down to 160, which is Blue Diamond, then down to Fort Apache and up. And that's a 48 mile bike, and I did that twice before I did the actual race. So I
That's
felt pretty
good.
confident that I can get the 56 mile.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a tough
Very cool.
bike ride that right there. So that's
Yeah.
good. All right, so now you come in for T2. Tell us about T2 and then going out for the run.
So this is where the nutrition comes in, because I'm pretty sure that I didn't do my best as far as nutrition, even though I planned it. I'm a YouTube Academy type person. So I was, taking advice from different people that are saying, hey, take a gel here, take a gel there, take, banana, and essentially what I ended up with was taking a gel every 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, being easy on the solids, a lot of fluids, electrolytes, and getting through there. And the reason why I say that is I went through all my bottles on the bike. I'm thirsty, and I slam a sports drink. And when I did that, I created a side stitch. And right coming out of like I came in T2 feeling fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I went out T2 with a side stitch, and that side stitch lasted for about 3 miles. And then I was like, it finally went away. And I'm pounding every single station. I'm pounding half a banana, I'm pounding a sports drink, I'm trying to get this thing to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And then it finally goes away. And on mile 5, I start to develop hamstring,
Cramping.
Charlie horses.
Oh, wow.
And so essentially, like, I go from running, jogging, to a walk for half a mile, jog for maybe 1/10 to 2/10 of a mile, walking half a mile, and I'm doing this number just to try to keep the cramping away. And even then, I'm still trying to do the bananas at every single station, and a little story all the way at the end. So I'm on the last station before you get to the finish line, right? You're coming into the park, you see everyone, you see, like, the tent city and all that stuff, as far as the vendors and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm almost there. And I get to the last station, which is a little bit less than a mile to go, I think, on the run. And they tell you not to stop when you're going through, getting your water, stuff like that. And I was following this gentleman, and I'm barely trying to make through it, but I'm at a slow trot / jog, and he stops. And right when he stops, now I have to stop. And when I stop, both my legs lock up.
Oh no.
So I'm like,
Terrible feeling.
screaming, right? I'm like, and like
No!
everyone's there, like taking photographs because they're waiting for their loved ones to come through there. And I'm just like,
I can't move.
and he's just like, are you okay? Like, what happened? Because basically I tried to avoid, running into him. And when I did that, I just locked myself up. And some other person gave me some bar that was essentially had a lot of sodium or whatever is needed, potassium, in order to kind of unlock that. I took it, got back to where I was walking / running again, and I finished the race. Yeah.
I love it. Boy,
Congratulations. Yeah.
It's funny. You tell the story, and I don't hear any doubt in your mind that you are going to complete this event. And it's neat to hear this. I'll just call it quiet confidence. I can see it and hear it in you talking about it. But I'm curious, now you're coming into the finish line. Your wife and kids were there?
Wife and kids, they weren't at the finish line. They were at T2, but I don't believe my wife, essentially, she was having to deal with a 2-year-old toddler, right? So she was trying to make sure that he was around the merry-go-round and taking care of him. So I don't fault anything for that. But yeah, it was a very emotional time coming into the. I cried a little bit. I'll say I did. I think a lot of people do, probably on their first one, maybe, and I probably will do it on my first full Ironman too. And it was a great experience.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, that's wonderful to hear that finish line. Yeah, it's the happiest place, trying to come across that and meaningful at the same time. So I was going to ask you a different question, but you just mentioned Ironman. So what's your plans going forward?
So you'll be surprised, and probably you'll think I'm in over my head, and I probably am. So essentially, it's finishing an Ironman. That is definitely the next step. But I actually mentioned to Luigi like a couple of days after I finished the 70.3, I was like, you know what I was listening to when I was training and getting myself hyped up is the Extreme Tri at Patagonia, and then also the Norseman.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if it ever comes down to where I get selected to go to the Norseman, I'll train for 6 months just to try to finish that thing. Whether it's a white shirt or a black shirt, as long as I finish, I'll be fine.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Well,
John did the Norseman. Yeah. So he can help you. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Congrats, man.
Yeah.
Congrats.
We could talk Yeah, we could talk about it afterwards. But yeah, so that I love it. I love that. So my question before that was going to be, now that you did the sprint and the 70.3, which is really bookends on the endurance spectrum, which one do you find yourself gravitating towards? But now I think I know the answer.
The longer distance. I mean, I'll do the sprints all day just because it's fun. It's great to be out and be a part of the community. You know, obviously the longer distances are more the mental, can I do this? Am I man enough, or am I mentally capable in order to do that? And I think that's a lot of this is about, you know, testing one's will, testing one's strength mentally, more so than for most of us, more so than being a career or, you know, trying to go for a podium or something like that. And to be honest with you, you know, my wife doesn't understand it. A lot of other people just don't understand it. And the reality, and I think a lot of it comes from military, from my perspective of it's just, to me, it's just as long as I don't injure myself in some way, I'll finish.
Mm-hmm.
Right. My endurance engine is at such that if I have to variable the speed back down, I'll finish.
No.
You know, I might not be the fastest person,
Good mindset.
but I'll get it done.
Well, and I tell you, that's that quiet confidence, and I see it and I hear it, and I think you're going to have a lot of success as you go forward. And I can't wait to see you do a full Ironman. And I certainly hope you get into Norseman, and we can talk about that, because that is a fabulous experience. Robert, this has been so great talking with you. I'm impressed with going from a sprint to a 70.3 in such a compressed period of time, and even signing up for a race without a bike. This is great for people to hear that these things are possible. So this is wonderful.
I think anything's
Robert,
possible.
Mhm.
I think sorry, Bob, real quick. I think anything's possible that somebody puts their mind to, no matter where they're at in their shape, as far as their physical shape. Maybe a 70.3 might be too long for them. Maybe it's a sprint or Olympic or something like that. But the reality is I feel I have friends of mine that have given up on doing a marathon just because they don't think that they can do it. And the reality is you can do it. And all it takes is putting one foot in front of the other, and barring anything like where you get heat stroke, or you break a leg, or you twist your ankle or something like that. Be honest with you, as long as you just keep one foot going in front of the other, you will finish. And I think a lot of people probably should have a little bit more of that mindset than just thinking that they don't need to impress anybody with their finishing position. They just have to get themselves over the finish line.
That's right. It's really a mindset of getting into the sport, and then getting to that start line, and then getting to that finish line.
And that's a very good message, and I'm glad a lot of folks are going to hear that, especially the new folks. You don't have to be the near the front of the pack on every race or on any race. Just as long as you keep on doing it and set your goals and do them. That's a good
finish
message.
line is meaningful for everybody. Robert, this is great. I am looking forward to catching up with you at our club events this year, and thanks for jumping on and talking with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
All right.
Have a good night.
Have a nice evening. Happy training.